women's health in general is severely underfunded. So when we looked at insurance, it's there to take care of people. And right now it's seen as so catastrophic, right? Death, disability, flood, all of that. But it has incredible positive impact. We want to lean into that with fertility insurance. And we look at women's health and reproductive health as a spectrum, and we're focusing on fertility right now, but there's stuff that comes before, there's stuff that comes after, a lot of underfunded areas. So how can we lean into insurance and community to address those areas? Hi, I'm Laura McDonald.
And I'm Dr. Christy Lane, and we are the co-founders of Flora Fertility.
And this is the future of insurance.
Ladies, thank you for joining me on the show. And I need to call out, this was a rescheduling because I was a diva and had a scheduling issue. So I want to start with a thank you for being willing to move to this, but it's great to have you both on.
Our pleasure. We're excited to be here.
So it's always tricky with two guests is who talks about what, but so Laura, since you just spoke, I'll ask Christy, who are you, and tell us about yourself, and then Laura, we'll go to you next, if that's okay.
That works?
Yeah. Okay, amazing. I'm Christy Lane. I am co-founder of Flora Fertility. My background is actually in healthcare research. So I've been doing research in women's health for a long time. Turned entrepreneur about 15 years ago and started my first company in predictive analytics with wearable devices. And that's how I ended up in insurance. That company was used by reinsurers and life carriers for life insurance underwriting. Sold that company. I've spent a bunch of time as a visiting professor in medicine at Stanford. I started the Wearable Health Lab at Stanford.
Wow.
And from a personal standpoint, I have 3 kids. And I did struggle with infertility. So when I started trying to have my first kid, this would have been about 2010. I'd been in school forever and decided to try and have children, and it didn't work out that way. And so at the time, I was building this other business, but was thinking, there have to be better solutions for infertility, both from a financial standpoint, but also from a community standpoint. It was a very isolating experience. So, had been thinking about this problem for a long time, and then was introduced to Laura, who has her own story about her why of Flora, but and we just had such great complementary expertise. She can introduce herself, but me coming from the underwriting, science, sales side of things, and over to you, Laura.
Thank you.
Laura, what about you?
Laura McDonald, co-founder with Christy of Flora. My background's been, actually, we're both based in Canada, but I've kind of lived everywhere. Our core product is launching in the US, but so my background, I guess, on a professional side, always been in the world, I guess, mostly of investments, but then that kind of investments in finance and that moved to insurance. Worked with some large investment firms, and then I founded what became Canada's largest digital media company that was focused on women and wealth. Back when that was kind of a really novel thing to think, I remember saying, really, like, the internet is where women now congregate to read about building wealth and finance and stuff. And that was a new thing. This is around 2010. And so we ended up partnering with all the major financial institutions, some in the US as well, but mostly Canadian. And then we had partnered with media outlets like Yahoo Finance was big at the time, then Fox News and HuffPost. And that was how we acquired users really cost effectively. So we ended up kind of creating a voice that reached millions. I had a couple books published in the personal finance space and ended up selling that. And then I worked for a large insurance company, really understanding their product and their advisory channels, and honestly fell in love with insurance during that brief 3-year stint. And then led strategy at a couple startups with other founders who I found just were really inspiring. And then ultimately co-founded Flora with Christy a couple of years ago, kind of wanting to go back into leading something with somebody I know and trust. That's Christy. And also just seeing a lot of purpose, like creating a purpose-driven company that was a really good business model and really leaning into insurance for new channels and for new markets. And then I guess on the personal side, I have 4 kids. Christy and I have 7 kids between us. So we're super proud of that. It's kind of crazy. And they range from age 4 to 20. Wow. Mine are on the upper end. And so I didn't experience infertility. I was super fortunate in that regard, but I've seen over the years, people weren't talking about it 20 years ago when I was having my first baby. But since then, I've seen a lot of family members go through it. And that's what kind of was really keeping me up at night, is how do we make that process easier for them so people can experience, honestly, that like it's amazing having kids,
Yeah.
the joy that they felt doing it.
Yeah. So thank you both for sharing just professionally. And Laura, I think your accidental entry into insurance is most people get into it. And yeah, why wouldn't you fall in love with the space and want to stay in it, right? But you only discover that by
Agreed.
accident. Um, but then on the personal side and that journey and the why and it's interesting, like the connection for you two coming together, having been founders and had the exposure on the like bigger, more structured side to want to do something together again for a real purpose. So what is Flora? What is it that you're doing? And how does insurance tie into that? Like what is the insurance product that this is?
Go ahead, Laura.
So Flora is really the first individually owned private coverage around fertility. So we're protecting your future risk to be able to have kids. And if you need fertility treatment, you have the dollars to pay for it. And so the big problem that we saw was that 1 in 6 people will need fertility treatment. That's in some cases even as high as 1 in 5.
It's
And
really common, and I don't know if most people even realize that stat.
Yeah.
And that's like known and reported. So maybe it's higher and people are unaware and just not getting help. But yeah, sorry to cut in, but
Yeah.
I was
no.
shocked when I learned that.
It's so like the World Health Organization labeled it a global health issue in 2023, where we need new mechanisms of funding. So, I mean, you go in anytime we're giving a presentation, we say like, raise your hand if you know anybody who's been impacted. Every single person raises their hand.
Yeah,
And now we're starting to see this generation, and Christy can speak to that with her kids. They've been born because their parents went through
yeah.
fertility treatment. So what we found was that fertility awareness is higher than ever now, where we weren't talking about it 10, 20 years ago, we are now. And so we're seeing a lot of young women, for example, freezing their eggs. They know that it's likely that they might need treatment down the road, or that they're going to delay having kids. And so when we looked at how do we fund fertility treatment, existing models have tended to be loans and financing, better than a credit card, but you're still paying for everything plus interest. Or on the insurance side, there's been momentum, there's been venture dollars and so forth, but they've either been group plans that are so expensive that really it's only available through Fortune 500 companies. And then there've been some models around money back guarantees around IVF. They have their place, but we can dive into those models, but they're attacking it a little bit late in the game.
Yeah.
And so we're saying, how do we make it truly affordable and accessible? We think there's a market to look at future risk. And so our policies are anywhere from $15 to $70 a month. We target women ages 20 to 34. And if they need treatment down the road, they have $50,000 of coverage available to them. And it's in their name. No matter where they work, no matter where they live, they own that insurance.
Um, I'm struck with all these questions of being a typical insurance person, like, but what about this? But what about this? So I'm wondering about all the kind of complications and difficulties in it um, so to back up, when my wife was pregnant, I worked for a British insurer with a large business at Lloyd's, and there happened to be a bunch of Lloyd's underwriters over, and they like think of the most creative, interesting things. They're like, "Oh, you got multiples insurance, right?" And I was like, "What the heck is that?" And then they scared the life out of me that I never thought about whether we were just having one or many, and it pays out on a schedule based on how many you have, and so you need a bigger car, or your house is too small, or more diapers, or whatever. And so, yeah, I hadn't thought about any of that. But one of the tricks is you can only get it up to a certain point, and then it would be too obvious that you were, cheating and you knew you were having multiples. Um, or you couldn't get it, and I should say, you couldn't get if you have a history of, twins in the family, or like there were all these stipulations. I imagine there's going to be similar dynamics here. Is like, when do people know too much to be able to get the coverage, or actually that's okay and you can underwrite for it? Like, what are some of the kind of meatiness to this as a product? Because otherwise, if it was super simple, we would have solved for it decades ago, maybe. Um, there's a lot to this, right?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think it's a first of its kind product. So this hasn't been done before. And a lot of what we've been doing over the last number of years, and frankly, me for most of my career, is figuring out how do we use existing and new data to best understand those risks?
Yeah.
And so that's why this is the very first ever individually underwritten product. So we used large public and private data sets to really deeply understand two things. One, to your point, what predicts infertility? So who are the women that are likely going to need to make claims? And then of the 1 in 6 who need treatment, what type of claims are they likely to make?
Yeah.
So we've built this proprietary model, and how it works essentially is you have to be, as Laura mentioned, between 20 and 34, a woman with no known infertility. And then we have a 1-year wait period. Once you have a policy, you have to wait a year. So
Okay.
we're looking to ensure the women, upstream of when they may need treatment. And it's pretty sophisticated underwriting engine, honestly, and it's quite similar to life insurance in many
Yeah.
ways. But we've run all kinds of iterations of varying models of different types of risk profiles to get to where we are today.
And where is that? So where are you from a go-to-market standpoint? And have you had, I mean, I want to say claims, but then it's like if there's a claim, maybe that's someone working towards having a family. So it's versus like we got in a terrible car accident or someone died. It's for the opposite reason, right? It's a tough thing, but hopefully leading to something beautiful.
We are aiming to sell our first policy in the US in June.
Okay.
And so right now we're working on finalizing the regulatory structure and also testing the underwriting platform, if you will, to make sure that it's working appropriately.
So regulatory, because this is a first of its kind, that can be really tricky. So how did that piece of the journey look to you then? Is there something existing you could lean on that the regulators would understand, or is this educating them and helping them understand as much as the consumer and distributors and whatever else you need?
Yeah, I can sort of answer that. Well, so first of all, it's been 2+ years of building out that model, as Christy referenced. So first, our biggest barrier was securing our capacity partners, our risk partners.
Yeah.
With naming names, we have some incredible A-rated reinsurance panel and carrier backing the product. So that's really a first. So a lot of security there around paying out future claims. And then from the regulatory side, and again, won't go dive too much into detail, but it's very much akin to, sounds weird, but like pet insurance, right?
Yeah.
Where it's the premiums are similar, it might be anywhere $50 a month covering this sort of future risk that might be 10,000 in payouts, 20,000 up to 50,000. And so it's a surplus specialty product. And
Okay.
there is no clear, you know, there's no clear path. There's no precedent for
Yeah.
this. And so we've had to lean on a lot of legal counsel, a lot of trusted advisors, and we're confident that this is the right space for this product for launch, and
Yeah.
will really allow us to then get it in front, really from almost a nationwide perspective, get it
Yeah.
out. And that also aligns with our distribution partners who are nationwide. And so we want it to be accessible and available, so that more people can access it and have that security.
I'm glad you mentioned the distribution. I was wondering, like, first time I heard about it, I was thinking like that maybe that's an employee benefit. But then to your point before, is that was one of the few ways you could access support for this, and it's expensive. But you're talking
Yeah.
about individual underwriting. So is this a like an individual product that's sold through an intermediary? Is it a direct sell? Like, what's the model for this?
Um,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
I can
Laura.
start. Yeah, it's really B2B2C. So if I lean
Okay.
back on what I did in the digital media space around women and wealth, so how do we have those channel partners with mass reach that are already trusted by our future policyholders? And so we were fortunate to, Christy has consulted with some pretty major, menstrual tracking apps and health apps, and lean into those partnerships.
Yeah.
So some of our partners at launch include a very large fintech for Gen Z. They reach about 1.4 million young women in the US who are already starting to show that awareness around
Yeah.
future fertility. We have a few menstrual hormonal tracking app partners, ranging from reaching 200,000 highly engaged users to upwards of 10 million.
Yeah.
And so those are our channel partners. And then we also lean into SMB, so small, medium businesses, typically under 1,000 employees. They can't afford the existing group models, or their groups are
Yeah.
too small.
Yeah.
And so for us, it's a very simple model. We lean into more voluntary flex benefits. The employer can we level the playing field. Let them offer fertility benefits. They just have to come in and co-pay or sponsor the benefits for their employees who need it.
Yeah.
It's super cost effective for them. They know exactly what they're going to be paying. There's no sort of PEPM fees or open enrollment. It's just clean, simple, and they can make sure they're taking care of their employees through this model.
Yeah.
And even I'm going to chime in because at this conference, I've been talking to a lot of people, obviously. And what's interesting is that it's not just the SMB, small, medium businesses that are interested in this. I've talked to some people from some pretty big insurance companies here that are like, wow, that just sounds more attractive than, the PEPM fees, being on the hook for the actual cost. So there is a world in which I would say down the road, we could actually also disrupt the larger employer model, because employees, there's this whole new, group of employees, Gen Z and millennials, who are demanding these new types of benefits
Yeah.
around, fertility, parental leave, paternal leave, which this falls under that. So the ability to have that coverage, but also have it be portable, as Laura mentioned, is a big part of it.
Yeah. There is an interesting push beyond just sort of the traditional like vision and dental and health, maybe commuter benefits or, some other sort of traditional things. And I feel like from a distribution standpoint, I should say in the employee space, distribution is either like, oh, none of that stuff matters, we can't be bothered with it, or it's like, I need to be different from all the other consultants that are trying to get that account, all the other brokers that are trying to get that account. I need a reason why someone would turn to me. And there are interesting things that a growing population of employees are looking to their employers to get, and they can be deciding factors when you've got two seemingly equal or similar offers.
Yeah.
So it's like and maybe it's not the majority, but there's a material group out there from a distribution standpoint who recognize like, I can't just do what's always been done, or I'm just as replaceable as, everyone else in the street. I need a reason to have a story that resonates more. And it can't just be like, yeah, I got you 5% less because next year someone will get you 8%. Like,
Yeah.
you have no competitive edge other than discounting.
Yeah. Well, and there's this new category of employee benefits is heavily important when you're talking about like, as you're saying, recruitment and retention, especially when you get into, higher level positions. There are a lot of like highly educated, ambitious young women who are wanting to really grow their careers, and they don't have to worry about it. And employers want them to stay.
Yeah.
And that's where there's this growing demand for, really flexibility, but also accessibility and portability, all those words that end.
Yeah. All the illities.
That's all the illities. Yeah.
I know it's really early to ask you about this, but what's next? No, in all seriousness, like, so you're coming to market this summer. I should say summer of 2025. Someone could be listening to this next year and you're already in market. But is this a first of a path that develops, and there were difficulties in the first offering because, it's never been done before and people didn't understand what they're supporting or whatever? Or is this like a first product in a move? What's the path ahead? And obviously there are certain things you can't share, and I totally respect, the privacy and secrecy for the company, but like, what is the movement that begins from this?
Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've nailed a lot of things or touched on a lot of things. So first of all, you're creating a net new product, right? New data sets, new risks. You can't, one of our investors said, like, I'm so glad you didn't try to like boil the ocean and cover absolutely everything. Doesn't make sense. We're already covering a very large TAM.
Yeah.
In women ages 20 to 34 who might want to one day have a baby. But with that said, yes, it's a first. We have a roadmap for other products that cover other markets. We also think that women's health in general is severely underfunded. So when we looked at insurance, and I know we, were talking about it even before getting on this call, like, it's there to take care of people. And right now it's seen as like, it's so catastrophic, right? Death, disability, flood, all of that, but it has incredible positive impact. We want to lean into that. So a lot of our branding is very uplifting,
Yeah.
empowering. One of our taglines is like, live and love on your own timeline. with fertility insurance. But we look at women's health and reproductive health as a spectrum, and we're focusing on fertility right now, but there's stuff that comes before, there's stuff that comes after, there's a lot of underfunded areas. So how can we lean into insurance and community to address those areas?
Yeah.
And just really excited to kind of be that hub that brings it all together.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I'll add real quick, Laura mentioned the word community. That's a big part of it for me. Is, it's not like a life insurance, you buy it and you forget type product. Like, we really are trying to create a community for the policyholders and beyond, where they can access perks and benefits, education, risk assessment. Because I know personally, when I was going through this infertility journey, there was nothing. There was nobody to talk to, let alone educational resources or perks. So that's a big part of it for us, is to be able to address women's health and the community support side of
Yeah.
things, with insurance as the underlying vehicle for that.
It's really striking me that in so many insurers I've talked to in so many lines of business, they're all desperate for their like, what's the way we can engage with the insured community to help them, and like what content and education and tools can we provide? And it always feels so like grasping at straws, and they can't figure like, what does an auto insurer do to really, it's like, oh, here's 10 safe driving tips and here's like 10 car maintenance. Like, that's fine. This is a totally different story, because it's like that community aspect, that engagement aspect is really powerful and very underserved, very necessary, but also like there's an unbelievable amount that you can do in that side of it, like insurance or not. It just seems so much more like ready made for that.
Well, I, when we were first conceptualizing or conceiving of Flora, I remember sharing it with a friend, and she's the head of life and health at a major insurer. And she said, like, this is how you get the first customers in the door. They're not buying life insurance. They're not buying disability, critical illness. They might buy it when they have the baby. So that's where we look at different other, as we understand your data and your life path, we can look to sell you other products and trusted solutions. But this might be the first insurance product these young women ever buy, or as me as a parent of a 20-year-old, I'll buy it for my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm funding her education. I'm funding a mortgage on her home in many cases, fertility treatments, that nest big expense that often parents are even funding. So we're just, we really think a positive impact product that's going to flip the head on how that next generation views insurance. And we can, again, just the marketing side of it can be very different than traditional channels.
And providing them with, I think one of the other unique offerings we have is what we're calling like lifestyle education or lifestyle coaching. Lots of women and men, I don't think, realize the impact of lifestyle behaviors on fertility. So things like physical activity, nutrition, stress. And so, medical factors aside, we have the ability to really even more deeply understand the impact of those, and then help women understand, okay, well, maybe I just need to take a few more steps per day, or maybe I should just, eat more veggies, whatever it is. That education component, I think, will be a huge value add for our policyholders.
So I had a weird question I wanted to ask you, but maybe it's not as weird now that I hear you saying that. Is you get a life insurance quote and you're a smoker or something, it's going to be a high rate, and like, okay, those are connected. You get rated, really high for your auto insurance because you drive too fast and you get a lot of tickets. Like, people get that. I don't think any of them is like, oh, I got a really high rate, I should learn to be a better driver. This one is like, you said, people who don't know that they have a high chance of infertility, haven't, had that medical knowledge so far. The underwriting could result in them recognizing a risk factor for themselves that they didn't see before, that feels like, unlike maybe with the smoker or the fast driver or whatever, it's not that they want to keep acting that way, but generally they're not going to change their behavior because their insurance was expensive. Yeah. Here feels like a space where it's like, I had no idea about this. And are there things I can do? It's not just like, oh, I got the insurance, they'll pay for it. It doesn't work that way when you're talking about fertility. It seems like people would be so interested in impacting change.
Yeah, it's one of the rare cases, I would say, where incentives are aligned.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about this a lot in lifestyle, wellness products and life insurance, but I mean, that's a very long tail on that, right? We're talking about direct impact, whereas you're saying women could understand relatively minor changes in behavior can have a significant impact on their fertility. And no one wants to have to go through fertility treatment. And of the 1 in 6 that need it, no one wants to have to do IVF.
Yeah.
It's invasive. It's needles, it's drugs, it makes you feel like, not great. So yes, agreed. Like we have an opportunity to educate, and then for women to just better understand maybe some small changes they can make to, help their journey along.
It just feels like it's set up positively for what, at least in PNC, like we talk about predict and prevent and, use IoT and make them better risks. And it's really hard. I don't think we're doing enough as an industry, but it's really hard. This feels like it's already made for you. You got like a very specific audience that is listening and you can engage with and have all those marketing and educational moments. The product itself ties to, the alignments there. I'm excited about this. It just seems so spot on.
And to the amount of women that reach out to us on LinkedIn, on social media, on find a way to connect with us and say, I'm so excited for this. I've been waiting for this. Why hasn't this been around? Or they want to come work for the company. It's attracting just the best quality people, experts, and future policyholders who I really feel have been waiting for this type of product. So just again, you don't often see that around insurance. People don't typically get that excited. And so we feel the time is absolutely right for this type of product, and others like it.
Yeah. I got one last question for you. I know we're tight on time, but it's not a space, women's health as a whole, women's specific insurance, like women's specific insert whatever product after that has not gotten its fair, not 50-50 investment product wise over the history of humans. It feels like there are a number of things that are starting to come to market. Are you building one of these things? Are you seeing that change in the recognition that, no, this is an incredibly large and important market that needs proper addressing? Or do you still feel like it's super early days and we're not? I'm just curious your perspective in the trenches building something.
I mean, from the investment side of things, it's still 2% of venture funding goes to female-founded businesses. It went up to 3, I think, in 2023, and now it's back under 2. That being said, I think it depends who you talk to. So there are some amazing women and men in venture who are going, 2 feet in on women's health. And I think there's, I was at a conference in New York a couple of weeks ago called Fintech is Femme, and it was just amazing, the energy around fintech, women in fintech, and growing solutions for women by women. So there's a movement. That being said, it's and the market is huge, as Laura mentioned. Like our TAM there's a lot of women in this age group. I think there is still a lag though from the venture standpoint of, not only female run businesses, but businesses focused on women, where I think there are a lot of folks that still don't understand that this is human health, right? Like having a baby isn't just on the women. This is building a family. So I don't know, Laura, if you have additional thoughts, but
we have a long way to go. The good news is that we're realizing that more than half the population is women, and there's a huge chance we're going to go through, even 1 in 6 going through fertility, vast majority going through menopause. We're seeing a lot of dollars and interest going there. So really excited about that. And I think on a personal level, the fact that we're 2 female founders with 7 kids is amazing. That I think you're getting more respect for that kind of founder because you have lived experience and you have incredible professional experience to bring to these very hard to tackle problems that have a lot of impact. And so we had 3 VC funds come in our pre-seed stage, just showing that VC investors are willing to show up for these spaces. And so that's super promising.
Promising is a good point to leave it on for a show. about the future. So I appreciate that and the time today and what you two are both building. And good luck with the launch this summer. And excited to see the rest of the Flora journeys. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.